Hello, welcome to Growing in Uncertainty. My name is Tess Miller, and I have created this show to help anybody who is feeling uncertainty and who believes that the power of our growth is actually in those times when we feel stuck or really uncertain about the process of making transitions in our lives. So if you're feeling like you're in a place in your life where you're experiencing some stuck or some uncertainty, you're in transition, then you have absolutely come to the right place. Thank you for being here today. I really appreciate your energy and presence whenever it is that you have a chance to watch or listen. So I'm actually experiencing a lot of transitions in my life right now, and I wanted to share with you some of the experiences I've been having and how I'm coping with those experiences that inevitably come up when we're in transition. So some of the transitions that are happening in my life right now are that my child is graduating from the 8th grade, and so with that comes the transition from being in a school schedule to more of a summer schedule. But there's also the bigger transition of reconciling that I am going to have a child who is now in high school, and that's a major shift in I know my child's development, but also in my development as a parent, just to wrap my brain around what does that mean to have a high schooler now, and what are the things that we need to focus on as a family as we move through this next phase of his development and his life. Another big transition that's happening right now that I know all of you are experiencing is the transition into returning to public life. The pandemic is still going on, but at the same time, we are all re-entering our public lives now that the vaccines are out, or now that people are feeling more comfortable wearing their masks, or just feeling more comfortable being out and about. And that comes with its own issues of transitioning, whereas before, I know in our household we weren't going out very much in public, and so now having to be out in public and manage our energy, I noticed the first few times we went out we would get overwhelmed really easily. So that might be something that's coming up for many of us right now, understandably. Another transition is that the weather, I think, is finally stabilizing. It's getting warmer outside, which means it's growing season. So a lot of planting and getting the garden ready and weeding. And so transitioning to adding those tasks to my schedule every year inevitably brings up transition issues for me, and feeling like my time has to be spread out a little bit more in other areas. Another transition for us is that summertime also represents a time when we start working on a whole bunch of house projects. That's when my husband has a little bit more time. That's when I have a little bit more time. And because we didn't really do anything last year, we're going to be doing a lot this summer. But again, whenever you're making change, even to your living space, there's a lot of transition that has to happen. There's a lot of uncertainty about, well, how are things going to happen? When are things going to happen in the house? And finally, this last bit of transition for me happened literally today. I hit the publish button on my book, The Book of Stuck. I'm so excited about that. Really, really excited about that. It's been a long time coming. I know I've been saying a lot on these videos that I would be announcing a book launch very soon. And yeah, it is actually happening. So, but the problem is I have to wait 72 hours now for the review process to happen. And then once that's finished, my book will be for sale. Oh my goodness. So there's a transition with that in terms of all of the activities that I'm going to be undertaking in the weeks and months ahead, trying to get my book out there and talking about it and getting my book into the hands of people who I know will really benefit from it. So those are all the things that are going on in my little life. And fortunately, oh, there's Myra. She has decided to share her 2 cents again. Fortunately, all of the transitions that are happening in my life are really positive. And you know, it's really exciting to see my kid grow and change, and it's great to be able to get out and about in public, and I'm excited that the weather is good and to be out and planting things. And I've been really looking forward to doing a lot of these home improvements, and of course I've been really excited about getting my book finished. But whether a transition in our lives is viewed as positive or negative, there is going to be some inevitable uncertainty, inevitable, obstacles, limitations. There's going to be, the questions of, well, how do I leave behind the way I was living my life before and get into a new way of being, of living my life? What does that even look like? Sometimes it's hard to really know what your life is going to look like once you've made it through a transition. So there's this period of uncertainty in any transition that can happen. And sometimes that transition can feel like it's going to go on and on forever, especially when you hit obstacles or limitations in some way. The process of transitioning might not be going as quickly as you might want it to. There might be a snag that you hit or a delay. There can be a lot of uncertainty about how to get over an obstacle or through some kind of limitation. Things can happen in the process of transitioning that are out of your control, and that can put you into a position of needing to find a new solution that you might not have thought you needed to find. Or you have to wait for other things or other people to do something on their end in order for other things to happen. You have to do 10 other things before you can actually do the thing that you really, really want to do. And sometimes the number of things that you want to see change can feel like it's more than you can handle. Sometimes what I notice myself doing is that when I want to change one thing, I start noticing all of the other things that I want to change. And then I start to feel a little bit overwhelmed with, just feeling like, my life is not where I want it to be. So when we're in that process of transition, sometimes we can feel like we're going to be stuck in that transition forever. We wonder if things are ever going to feel normal or stable again. So the transition itself is a challenge and, can bring up all kinds of things. But then on top of that, when you do have some kind of delay or obstacle or something that you didn't anticipate, that can really make the transition feel even more insurmountable at times. In the process of writing my book, for instance, there were lots of times I just wanted to give up. Or in the process of launching my coaching business, there have certainly been times when I was just really tempted to go back to my old life where I knew how everything worked, I knew how everything needed to be done. But, the problem is at this point, I can't really go back, but sometimes going forward can just feel so hard. It can take a lot of energy, and there can be a lot of uncertainty. So something we have to reconcile when it comes to transitions is that there are certain feelings that we're going to feel no matter what. There's going to be frustration. There's probably going to be some anger at times. There's going to be feelings of, uncertainty, discomfort, and there might be times when you feel hopelessly lost. That's all normal. And you won't always feel that way, but there are going to be points along the way during a transition when something like that is going to come up. So something I'm focusing on in my current transitional phases of my life is to remain grounded. So what does it mean to stay grounded when it comes to transitions? Well, the first thing that I like to think about when I'm keeping myself grounded is to keep reminding myself why I'm in the middle of this transition in the first place. What brought you to this transition point in your life? You can think about the circumstances, the feelings, all of the reasons that you even considered making this transition. Or maybe there were things that were out of your control that are forcing this transition to happen. Even so, thinking about the why, reminding yourself that, well, I can't really go back to my old life, so I guess the only way is through. So reminding ourselves what we're reaching for, why we're reaching for it, whether or not we're convinced that we can actually get there, is going to be the first way that you can really keep yourself grounded. The second way that you can keep yourself grounded in a transition is to create a clear plan, but don't cling too tightly to it. Certain things have been coming up related to our house projects that this step in the grounding process has really been beneficial to me. So, for example, I've noticed myself checking in with my spouse about, okay, what's the plan for this? How are we going to do this? What's the timeline for this? And that's my way of having that clear plan in my head of, okay, I know that certain things in our house can't happen before others. So before I get frustrated about this certain area, what can I, focus on in the meantime? How can I stay grounded in the steps and the process of what needs to happen? So we have so many things that we want to do this summer to our house. The scheduling is something that really has to be considered, and knowing that timeline helps me stay grounded in what I can do in the moment. And when I feel like we're progressing, knowing that timeline helps me feel like knowing that timeline helps me feel like we are progressing no matter what, and therefore my motivation to be in the transition process stays elevated. But obstacles inevitably happen. And so, for example, one of our recent house projects has been to replace a toilet. And so we purchased the toilet and we set up the installation, and we had the date on our calendar, but the day came and the installer canceled on us. So we had to reschedule. And then the second date came, and again, the installer had to reschedule. This happened 7 times over the course of about a month and a half or 2 months. And it was very, very frustrating. Our level of anger and frustration at seeing this huge box with a toilet in it sitting in our dining room for 2 months was kind of at a threshold. But we remained grounded in why we needed to replace the toilet. And we continued to make phone calls to figure out what in the heck is going on here. It was definitely a test of our patience. And for a while, it felt like it was never, ever going to happen. We felt really stuck in that process. But we trusted that eventually it would happen, but it might not happen on our timeline. And as long as we could accept that fact, yes, it will happen, but not right now, then we could stay in the process and do the things that we could do to make it happen. And yes, eventually it did get installed, and all's well that ends well. The third thing that you can do to keep yourself grounded through transition is to distinguish between what you can and what you can't control. For example, we couldn't control when the installation of our toilet was going to happen. We thought we could, by getting it on our calendar and all of that, but ultimately that wasn't in our control. That was in the installation company's control. And if we had focused only on the fact that we didn't have control over that, our energy could have, really burnt up. And we might not have had the energy to keep going on some other house projects. Instead, we decided to constantly shift into what we could control and trust that it was going to happen. When I'm feeling frustrated about feeling stuck in situations like this, my go-to response is to recognize the feelings that come up for me, acknowledge and validate those feelings, look at the thoughts attached to those feelings, and then figure out a new thought or shift my thinking in some way to what I can actually control rather than letting it stay fixated on what I can't control. So this also came up for me in relationship to a garage sale that we're trying to get ready for. We wanted to have a garage sale this past weekend, but we realized it needed to be delayed. We weren't going to be ready for it, so we put it off, and as a result, there are piles of garage sale stuff kind of tucked away all over our house, and we've kept it as neat and tidy as we can because that's important to me. I really value organization and tidiness. But even so, every time I try to go and, tidy something else in the house, there's another pile for the garage sale that I can't really do anything about right now. I know it will happen, but it can't be right now. So one day my frustration really reached a threshold with this. And yeah, I did have a little bit of a meltdown. My family can attest to that. Fortunately, they're very supportive, and they know me, and they know, my process, and that I don't mean to direct it at them, but I do have pent up energy that needs to come out in some way. And in that little meltdown moment, I recognized that I was resisting the fact that the piles are just out of my control right now. So I decided, okay, I need to focus on something else instead. What do I have control over? And I realized, the garden really needs attention, and that's a place where I can really stand to get something done, and that would probably feel really good to me. So I went out and got rid of the piles of weeds that needed removing so that we could actually plant seeds for the growing season. So the act of shifting my focus to what I could control grounded me, and it gave me more internal space for putting those feelings of frustration. Sometimes when there's not enough room for the difficult, challenging emotions, that's when we can really have our meltdowns. But when we can create space, we can allow those emotions to still be there, but it just doesn't make us react so much. We can get out of reactionary mode and choose a different response. So, focusing on what you can control is such a powerful way that you can ground yourself through any transition. The fourth thing that you can do is to remember that just because you're uncomfortable through a transition doesn't mean that anything is wrong. You know, a lot of times when I'm in a transition and I feel really uncomfortable, I can start to believe a story that, oh, there must be something wrong with me, or something's wrong in this process. I made the wrong decision. And it can be easy to follow that rabbit down that hole, but it may not necessarily be the truth with a capital T. There's a big difference between the truth with a capital T and the truth with a lowercase t. You know, feelings sometimes bring up different truths for us, but we get to decide whether those truths are with a capital or a lowercase t. Our feelings might feel like the truth with a capital T, but in reality, the feelings might just be delivering a truth with a lowercase t. So, for example, the capital T truth about our toilet was that it wasn't being installed when we wanted. But the truth with a lowercase t was that my feelings wanted me to know that there was something wrong with the installation company and I needed to take action in the form of making phone calls. I needed to be proactive. But the truth, lowercase t, truth of my feelings expressed that message by sending up anger and frustration. There's nothing wrong with these feelings, but they give us the energy to deal with the things that need our attention the most. My job in that moment was to recognize those feelings of frustration and anger, but then harness them or channel them and respond to them without reacting or being at the effect of those emotions. There was nothing wrong with the emotion, but I could have made some choices based on the energy of the emotion that I might have regretted later on. For example, I could have called up the installation company and had a yelling fit with them. But then ultimately, what does that accomplish? Not a whole lot. So anyway, when we can use the energy of an emotion in a healthy way, we can really feel like we're at choice for how we channel our energy. We can stay grounded in what serves our highest good. So remember, emotions can sometimes be uncomfortable, but it doesn't last forever, and it doesn't necessarily mean that anything is wrong. So as you may already know, my focus word for 2021 is the word freedom. And when we remain grounded through a transition, we gain the freedom to choose how we want to respond or how we want to navigate that transition. We open ourselves up to new possibilities, new solutions, and new opportunities. And so I hope that whatever transitions that you might be going through right now, that this message resonates with you. Thank you so much for joining me today. And, you know, I'm always so grateful for your comments, your likes, your shares, any feedback, and, you know, anything about how this message might resonate with you. So I will have a very important announcement to make in the next few days about my book launch. And if you want to hear about that, and if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my email list so that you can know when that book launch is going to happen. All you have to do is go to my website, www.tess-miller.com, fill out the little form, and you'll be all good to go. You can stay tuned to any of my updates also on my Facebook or LinkedIn business pages. You can find that under the name Wings Unfolded, LLC. Or you can find me by name on Instagram or YouTube. If there's something that you are wanting help with in your life, a transition or any place in your life that you're feeling a bit stuck, feel free to send me a private message. I'd love to connect with you. Remember that it's okay to be stuck, but you don't have to stay there. Take care and have an amazing week.